begin? Okay. All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending Beaver Immigration Consulting's live webinar on studying Canada. Every 2 weeks, we host a live webinar on Facebook focusing on a immigration pathway towards Canada. And today we're going to be focusing on studying Canada, which by far is the most popular way to immigrate to Canada, and is one of the most efficient ways to immigrate to Canada. And we'll explain how that works shortly. Just a quick disclaimer before we begin the presentation. Beaver Immigration is a private company. We do not represent the government of Canada, and we are not affiliated with the visa office. We are licensed by the government to do this work. And at the same time, we do not offer bursaries or scholarships. So, a little bit about myself. I'm Nicholas Avramis. I'm the only licensed Canadian immigration consultant in sub-Saharan Africa. Beaver Immigration is based in Johannesburg. I'm coming to you live from our offices here in Rosebank, South Africa. And we service sub-Saharan Africa with clients in South Africa, Kenya, the Congo, and we also have clients in China, Vietnam, and parts of Indonesia. As I mentioned, Beaver Immigration is licensed by the federal regulator for Canadian immigration consulting, so we do have the license to offer Canadian immigration consulting services and to process the actual immigration application on behalf of clients. At Beaver Immigration, we primarily do 3 types of immigration work. We focus on skilled workers, which is primarily through the Federal Skills Worker Program, which is Canada's flagship visa program. We focus a lot on business immigration, but by far, in terms of volume, we do a lot of study visas, and we'll explain why that is as we progress during the presentation. In terms of what we're going to talk about today, as we always start with these presentations, we're going to give the viewers an overview of Canada, because it's a very unique country, and the way the country is set up, it manifests in the way the immigration system works. I'm going to give the viewers a quick update on the current state of immigration in Canada. Then we're going to talk about study in Canada, why people go study in Canada, who studied in Canada, and how studying in Canada can lead to citizenship in a very short amount of time. And as I mentioned, if you have any questions, please write them in the comments section, and we will try to address as many as we can after the presentation. So, a quick history of Canada in 2 minutes or less. The settlers first started to arrive in Canada in the 15 and 1600s, and it was primarily the French and English. That's why there are 2 official languages in Canada. That's English and French. A common myth is that you need to speak French to immigrate to Canada or to get a job in Canada or even to study in Canada. That is not the case. 80% of the country speaks English, but if you do speak French and English and are bilingual, it really helps. It's your chances of entering the country, of immigrating, are immense. So Canada is a very young country. Not too many people know that. It was founded in 1867. We peacefully broke away from the UK in 1931. And the motto of the country is peace, order, and good government. And hence it's a peaceful nation, as we've never had any revolutions or civil wars. Canada is a regional-based country. There's 5 distinct regions. We have Western Canada, then we have the prairies, then we have Central Canada, Quebec, which is the French-speaking part of the country, the Atlantic provinces, and really the country is broken down between the federal government, or the government of Canada, and the 10 provinces. So the role of the federal government is really to outline how the country works. on a broad scale through legislation and statutes. Then it's the 10 provinces' responsibility to deliver services, such as healthcare and education. So each province has its own education system, it has its own healthcare system. And because these provinces are unique, they also have their own ministries of immigration, just like the federal government does. And because they have their own Ministry of Immigrations, they have their own immigration programs. That's why Canada is very unique, that you have two governments who each offer their own immigration programs. But it's important to understand that by the end of the day, the government of Canada or the federal government are ultimately responsible for who comes into the country and how they come into the country. They're the ones who process the visas. But we'll come back to this idea of the provincial programs that are known as provincial nomination programs at a later stage. So in terms of a national overview, Canada is the 7th largest economy in the world, valued at $2 trillion. Unemployment is very low, at under 6%. We spend an awful lot on healthcare, which is about $250 billion US. And we spend a lot on education, both at the secondary school level and at the post-secondary level, about 65 billion US. The current population of Canada is 37.7 million, which is the lowest out of all the industrialized countries. We have a very low population base, and we have an aging population, and we have some of the most expensive social programs in the industrial countries. So in order to address the low population base, Canada is in the middle or just beginning a very ambitious recruitment drive to attract 1.4 million new permanent residents over the next 36 months. So COVID has slowed it a little bit down, but the current target for 2021 is 401,000. Okay, so at the last report in July for 2021, 185,000 people were granted permanent residency in Canada. So in 2020, the quota is going to be 411,000, and in 2023, the quota is going to be 421,000. So last month, the minister indicated that the government is on track to probably exceed the 1.4 million quota by the end of 2023. So really the point is COVID has not slowed down or affected Canada's efforts to attract new immigrants, skilled workers, students, entrepreneurs. And the most important thing for you to take away is if you're thinking about immigrating, now is the time. And it's important to understand Canada is a nation of immigrants, and we're really in our 5th wave of immigration. The last time Canada even came close to letting in this many people was right after the Second World War. But 1.4 million people will be the highest number they've ever let in this short amount of time. So let's start talking about study in Canada. Why do international students choose Canada? Well, let's first look at how many foreign students there are in Canada. Right now, the best estimate is there's over 700,000 foreign students in Canada right now. That's probably the most out of any other country. The only other country that has this amount is Australia. In 2019, was a record year. The visa office around the world issued about 404,000 study permits. In 2020, it dropped off to about 350,000, but that was probably because of COVID. Just people weren't coming through because of the pandemic. But at no time was the border closed to those who had a valid study permit. In 2020, the government invested about $150 million Canadian to attract more foreign students. Um, Foreign students bring about $25 billion to the economy in terms of tuition, rental housing, and investment into the country. And foreign students actually support 170,000 jobs in Canada. So why does Canada promote students to come in and study in Canada? Well, you have to understand the government of Canada's philosophy is that they believe immigrants should come to Canada on a temporary basis, whether it's a study permit or a work permit, if they can find arranged employment. And if somebody's willing to make the investment to come and study in Canada, if they like the country, if they can assimilate, the government wants to retain the human capital, okay? And they've, unlike many other countries, they've created a direct pathway for foreign graduate students to obtain citizenship in a short amount of time. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, let's discuss who studies in Canada. Automatically, obviously, a small percentage is high school students. Students between 13 and 19 will go to boarding school. That makes up a small percentage. A larger percentage is obviously varsity students at the undergraduate level. That's usually between the ages of 19 to, let's say, 25, 26, which is a big portion of it. Then a sizable portion is master's students. Ages between 25 to 35 are going for their master's degree or postdoctorate degree. But a very large percentage is what we call mature students. That 30 to 40 crowd who are looking to upgrade their skills and are also planning a new life in Canada. So, where can you study? What can you study in Canada? Well, in order to be eligible for a Canadian study visa, you have to be accepted into a Canadian academic institution, and the government defines this as a list of 1,541 schools that are known as designated learning institutions, DLIs. So the government has a predefined list of Canadian schools. That's a composition of universities, colleges, trade schools, vocational schools, and academies. DLIs, designated learning institutions. And within these DLIs, there's over 10,000 programs you can choose from. And within these programs, in terms of courses rather, you can take anything from a one-year certificate program to a diploma program, obviously a bachelor's program, master's, all the way up to the PhD level. The reality is, any type of program you're looking for, Canada will have it. So, this is an important slide because we get this question asked a lot. What is the cost of tuition in Canada? This is a relative question because the cost of tuition really depends on what type of program you're taking as an international student and where in the country you're studying. So, obviously tuition fees for international students are greater than domestic students, okay? And you have to take into account that depending on the city you're in, okay, tuition is going to be higher, and depending on the type of institution you're studying at, okay? So obviously, if you're in a major city, okay, at a top academic institution, your tuition is going to be higher as compared to being outside one of the major metros at an institution that has, let's say, lesser prestige, okay? The thing to remember is with so many international students coming from around the world, there is an academic institution that the more will likely fit your budget within reason. So, In Canadian dollars, looking at, an average for first year tuition, an 8-month certificate program, which would be a year, would probably cost you 10,000 to 15,000 Canadian for the year. Okay? A college diploma, okay, which would usually last 2 years, which is a very popular program to take, would probably cost you 14 to 18,000. Okay? And if you wanted to go for a undergraduate or varsity program, you're looking at an annual tuition of 18 to 25,000, and master's and PhD programs start at 15,000 and can escalate thereafter, and that really depends on the program you're taking, the agreement you have with the school. One thing I would say is that Canada, compared to the US academic institutions in the UK, Australia, they're a bargain. They're a steal. Schools in the US and the UK cost 4 to 5 times this cost. So, this is a really important slide. How do you qualify for a Canadian study permit? Okay, and again, Beaver processes dozens of study visas for people really around the world on a monthly basis. First things first is you have to have a letter of acceptance from a Canadian school, designated learning institution. Okay, that's first and foremost. And we can help you with that. We'll talk about that going over. One of the most important things that's part of your study permit is you have to prove to the local visa office that you or your sponsor, which is typically your parents or family, close family, friends, you have the funds, cash, to pay for your first year of tuition, okay? Associated with that, you have enough funds to pay for your living expenses in Canada, as well as enough funds to pay for your plane ticket to Canada, okay? At the same time, you have to show that you don't have a criminal record by obtaining a police clearance certificate from your home country, and you also have to go for a medical exam, okay? So as long as you're in good health, you should be able to get the study visa. What's becoming more and more apparent is the visa office, especially in the kind of African market, they always want to see a study plan, okay? And they don't list this, right? You have to write your motivation to study. Why are you choosing to come to Canada? Okay, why are you taking this program? How does this fit into your long-term plans? What is your career goal? That is probably the number one mistake people make in their study visa application. They just submit their police clearance letter, they just submit their medicals, they just submit some bank statements, and that's it. You have to make the case as to why you are leaving your home country and why you are coming to Canada to take this program. It's really important, and that's really the value add that Beaver adds. Another popular question we get, and something I have to note, is while you are on a study visa, you are allowed to work in Canada even though you don't have a work permit. So while you are in school full-time, okay, you can work off campus for 20 hours a week, okay? So when school is not in session, i.e. when there's a summer break, because the Canadian terms are broken up into 3 terms, 4 months, 4 months, and 4 months. In the summer semesters, when you're off for 4 months, you can work full-time, which is about 40 hours, okay? And this is a popular question. So you can work both on campus and off campus. You don't need a work permit as long as you have a valid study permit, okay? But what you cannot do is drop out of school and begin working full-time. That's against the rules. So, what happens after graduation, okay? Canada is very unique compared to any other country in the world, insofar as when you graduate from a Canadian designated learning institution, you have the right to apply what's known as a postgraduate work permit, okay? And the postgraduate work permit allows students who have graduated from an eligible Canadian learning institution to obtain an open work permit to gain valuable Canadian work experience. Skilled Canadian work experience in a national occupation classification type 0, skill level A or B, that is gained through the postgraduate work permit program helps candidates qualify for permanent residence in Canada through the Canadian Experience Class with an Express Entry. What does all that mean? That means that when you graduate from a Canadian school, whether you take a one-year certificate, a diploma, a varsity, a master's, or a PhD, you can apply for an open work permit and you can work in Canada for up to 3 years in any job you want. Again, it's an open work permit to work anywhere in the country in any job you want. The job you choose does not have to be associated with the degree or study you partook in. This is different than in the US and the UK, where if you choose to remain, your job has to be associated with your study, okay? So this is really the mechanism that Canada has created to retain students, okay? They basically give you an open work permit to stay in the country. No other industrialized country does this. So what are the requirements for the postgraduate work permit? Well, basically, you would have had to have completed at least one academic year, i.e. 8 months, 2 terms, at an academic institution, okay, to be eligible. So you either had to complete a certificate, diploma, or some type of degree, and you must have maintained full-time status throughout the course of your program, except in the final term, okay? So this is one of the most important slides I'm going to show you today, okay? And this is how you go from being a student in Canada to a citizen, okay? You can go and study in Canada from anywhere up to a year, 3 years, sometimes longer if you're doing a PhD. Once you complete your program, you can apply for what we call the postgraduate work permit, okay? Now, if you take a program for at least 2 years, the postgraduate work permit is open for 3 years. In those 3 years, as long as you're able to accumulate 12 months of work experience in aggregate, you can apply for the Canadian Experience Class Visa, okay? The Canadian Experience Class Visa is a federal visa program for those foreign nationals who've accumulated 12 months of work experience in Canada. Then you can enter the Canadian Experience Class, then you can enter the Express Entry System, okay, for permanent residency, okay? But remember, you're entering Express Entry now with Canadian work experience, Canadian education, along with your core human capital factors, right? So you should be able to generate a tremendous amount of points because Express Entry has a bias towards people who have worked in Canada and studied in Canada. Then the great thing is, as opposed to waiting 3 years to apply for citizenship, the government will recognize some of your time in Canada while you are working in Canada under the postgraduate work permit, because they want to fast track you towards citizenship. There is one thing I wanted to mention. At the beginning of the presentation, I did mention about how provinces have their own provincial programs, okay? And these provincial programs are designed to attract the type of skills workers they're looking for, the type of entrepreneurs they're looking for, and also the type of international students they're looking for to retain them in the province. So each province, or most of them rather, have provincial programs that are focused on retaining master's or PhD students, okay? So if you do a master's, let's say in the province of Ontario or British Columbia, Ontario, for example, will nominate you for immediate permanent residency. So there's no need to apply for a work permit or go through express entry. If you do a master's or PhD at an Ontario university, they will immediately sponsor you and nominate you for permanent residency. So you avoid the whole process of going through express entry. Same with British Columbia, although this one's a little bit more, I guess, restrictive. It's more in the health sciences and natural sciences. That's what they're looking for. But each province, they're trying to attract certain types of international students, okay? They really want to attract masters and PhDs because it feels it adds to the economy. So what is the process? How do you study in Canada? Like, how does this whole thing begin? Well, the first thing I mentioned is you have to secure what we call a letter of acceptance, okay? And Beaver, this is where Beaver excels at helping students not only in the African market, but around the world. We deal with educational placement specialists in Canada, and you tell them what you want to study, where you want to study, and what your budget is, and we guarantee you we will find you a school. There is a seat for you in Canada, okay? We will get you a letter of acceptance, okay? Again, as part of that process, we'll need your resume, we'll need your high school marks, or we'll need your university transcripts, maybe some reference letters, but we will find a school for you, okay? That's actually the easy part, and that usually takes about 2 to 3 months, okay? Now, if you're looking for a master's program, a PhD program, we can help, but those take a little bit longer, all right? Because the intake periods are different for that, and those are a little bit unique in nature. But with 15 different hundred schools in Canada, there is a school out there for you, okay? After we secure the letter of acceptance from a university, that is when we start the process for the visa, okay? We have to start collecting all your documents, get police clearance letters, medicals, and we really have to start crafting the story as to why you want to go study in Canada. And we have to create a detailed educational plan and your career plan. So, in a nutshell, that is the benefit of studying in Canada. Now, Kirsten, do we have any questions? All right, she's just pulling them out on her phone. Okay, so the first question is, can I take part-time studies in Canada? No, most of the study permits, you have to be a full-time student in Canada. You cannot get a study visa for part-time studies. It has to be full-time, and you won't even be eligible for the postgraduate work permit in that case. What's another question? Oh, this is a really important question. It's something we should have mentioned in the presentation. The question is, can I take my spouse and children? The answer is yes, and this is really important. Under Canadian immigration law, if you receive a temporary visa, study permit, work permit, you can apply for an open spousal work permit for your spouse and your children, so they can come with you. So while you're in school, your spouse would get the open work permit, and your children would get, their visas to enter school. The only thing to keep in mind, though, is that for each additional dependent you're bringing with you, there is a requirement, I believe it's $4,000 Canadian, that you have to show on top of your living expenses and your tuition. Okay? Any other questions?
Okay. I've just obtained my degree in civil engineering. Would I be able to do my master's in Canada? And would I be able to take my parents?
So the question was, they just completed their undergraduate in chemical engineering, and can they pursue their master's, and can they take their parents? So in terms of the first question, yes, you can absolutely do your master's, and I think that would be an excellent idea, and it is a straight path towards permanent residency, especially if you do it in either Ontario or BC, which I strongly recommend. In terms of taking your parents, the short answer is no. On the study permit, you can apply for a temporary visa for them to accompany you to help you settle, but in terms of them having any status, the answer is no. However, this is a really important point to make. When you become a permanent resident in Canada or a citizen, you have the right to sponsor your parents, okay? That's why a lot of parents send their children to Canada to study, because they know they're ultimately going to become permanent residents should they decide to pursue status in Canada, long-term status. And over time, they can sponsor their parents for permanent residency. Associated with that, even if you don't want to sponsor your parents, you can apply for what we call a super visa, where basically for the grandparents, they have basically a 10-year visa to enter and exit the country with easier mobility. Any other questions?
Okay, there's two that are very similar.
Okay.
One is the lady's son is finishing school this year. Should they start their degree here and then go to Canada, or should they go to Canada immediately for their degree? And the other is similar in the sense of they are completing their masters in 2022, so they would want to apply for 2023 in Canada. When should they start their application?
So the first question was, should they start, if you're studying in your home country now, and can you make an application to Canada to study? If I understood the question correctly, when you're trying to transfer from your home country, okay, from your academic institution in your home country, and transfer to a Canadian university or college or designated learning institution, it's tricky. You first have to apply officially to the school. Only after they accept you will they let you know how many credits from your home country institution will they recognize, okay? So transferring from your home country, okay, trying to transfer credits to Canada is not as straightforward. It's a long process, okay? And it's fraught with disappointment, okay? Because Canadian education standards are unique and different, okay? So my advice would be go to Canada and start your program fresh. Transferring is tricky, okay? Once you're accepted, then you can apply for your study visa. Your study visa has nothing to do with, transferring your credits. There's two different things. What was the second question? When they should start the process?
For their masters, yes. They are completing their degree in 2022, so they would want to apply for masters starting 2023. When should they start their application?
So the question was, they want to pursue their masters in 2023. When should they start the process? By the end of the day, it really takes about 6 to 8 months to put a good study application together. What do I mean by that? We need about 2 or 3 months to find a school, depending on, the complexity, okay? The younger the applicant is, the easier it is to find a school because there's just so much choice, there's more seats. The older the person is and the more complex the discipline it is, it could take longer. And then the other thing too is, depending on, it's really up to the applicant. How fast can they get their police clearance letter? How fast can they get their finances in order? It doesn't take us very long to process the visa application. We can do it very fast. It's just, does the applicant have a valid passport? Or they have to go to the passport office to get a new one, right? The passport, it cannot be less than a year from expiry, right? It's little things, right? I will tell you, before COVID, the wait times to get a study visa was usually 8 weeks, but the reality was they were processing them in about 4 weeks. Now I'd say it's about 10-week wait, okay? But that is fluctuating, okay? But the Canadian visa offices around the world are pretty good. So my advice is the sooner you start, the better. Because obviously we don't want to rush at Beaver. So I'd say at minimum, bare minimum, you want to start the process 6 months. Ideally start 8 to 9 months before, okay? And that also involves if you don't already have a school in mind. Any other questions?
We've got time for 2 more.
Time for 2 more.
Let's do. Is it possible to apply for a bachelor's degree while doing another here in South Africa? Note, I'm currently doing online studying due to COVID-19.
So the question is, while you're currently studying in your home country, I guess you're in South Africa, can you apply for another program in Canada? Absolutely. Most of our clients are doing that. So a lot of our clients, they've just finished their undergraduate degree, let's say at UCT, Stellenbosch, Wits, and we'll send them to Canada to do, a 2-year college diploma, okay? That's, something that kind of what they studied, but, something that they've kind of focused in terms of what they want to do, so they, really want to focus. So yeah, that happens all the time.
And then one, which is a recurring one, from a gentleman in Ghana. Is he able to apply through us, Beaver, to get to Canada? In Ghana.
So the question comes from an individual in Ghana asking if they can apply through Beaver. Yes, they can. Beaver will help you find a school, and we will help you process your visa application to Immigration, Refugee Citizenship Canada. Again, we help people, again, from all over sub-Saharan Africa and from parts of Asia. And again, we help people, our youngest client from studies is 17, and then we have people all the way at 39 years old who go and study either their master's or a college diploma in Toronto. And we have people studying everything from a master's in poetry to doing their PhDs, to doing a year's certificate in digital marketing in Toronto, to doing computer science programs, mathematics. College business degrees are pretty popular, but there's everything. Yeah, so Kristen, is that it for questions and comments? Do we have anything else?
I think it is. I've just said anyone
Okay.
hasn't answered.
So the best way to reach us is info@beaverimmigration.com if you're interested and want to learn more and you choose to go to Canada. I will say this, we're approaching September. The next intake date for most schools in Canada is January. So realistically speaking, the next intake date that's realistic for people to start going to school in Canada would be May. Most schools offer May, but the majority would be in September. But yeah, if you started the process now, a lot of schools offer, because education in Canada is big, there's 3 intake periods. There's the traditional September start date, where all programs start in September. Then 80% have a January intake date for most programs, and about 65% also offer the summer or May intake. And it's not a bad idea to enter Canada in May when it's in the summertime. So that's it for Beaver Immigration. Again,
4 really good questions.
oh, okay, there's 4 really good questions, so we're just going to hang on here. My marketing people are telling, okay, what are the questions?
Okay. We've got one. Are jobs guaranteed once our studies are complete in Canada?
So the question is, are jobs guaranteed? No, jobs are not guaranteed, but as long as you complete your course, you will be eligible to apply for the postgraduate work permit, which is an open work permit. And I can tell you that we do have an aging population. There is a demand for young and skilled workers across the country. Next question.
If you are in an undergraduate degree program in South Africa this year, but you wish to pursue a different degree in Canada, would you apply for this as a transfer or an international student?
So the question was, if you're in South Africa right now as an international student, would you apply for a transfer or would you apply as a new student? Is that the question?
No. They wish to pursue a different degree in
Though
Canada.
they wish to apply for a different program in Canada. The answer is yes. I'd always say start applying for a new program in Canada. Never try to transfer it. It's tricky. It's very complicated to do that.
So answer is international students and not transfer.
International student and not transfer.
Okay. Next one. I'm currently doing my master's via a UK university. Would I be able to transfer to a university in Canada and complete the research aspect of my master's there?
So the question is, the individuals doing a master's online, would they be able to transfer their program to a Canadian university? Anything's possible. Again, when you're transferring credits, it's on a university to university basis. But I will say this, there's nothing preventing you from doing Canadian school online, okay? But to be eligible for the work permit and to gain credits towards your permanent residency, you physically need to be in a Canadian school. So I should have made this clear during the presentation. You cannot take a Canadian academic course online from your home country and then expect to apply for a work permit or apply for permanent residency. It doesn't work that way. But in terms of transitioning from an online course to Canada, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. It's really between you and the academic institution, and then you apply for your study visa.
Okay. What is the most requested skilled worker in Canada in terms of studies? So this is the same lady who asked with regards to her son who is finishing school. So yeah, the next question is, what is the most requested skilled worker requested by Canadians?
So the question is, what is the most requested skilled worker in Canada? That's a good question. And, you know, as an immigration expert, there's a very clear answer to that. Right now, there's a huge demand within the Canadian economy for 2 types of skilled worker. One is in information communication technology, and 2 is in financial services. So let me unpack that for you. Canada loses all its IT workers, computer programmers, software engineers, website designers, media developers, anything to do with tech, to the US, okay? So there's a big focus to attract, digital media technology workers. Huge space. Number 2, financial services. Very broad industry, very broad category. But Canada's a very wealthy country. We have a lot of banks, a lot of financial asset management companies, and we have an aging population force. So a lot of people within the financial services industry are retiring, and big financial institutions, some of the largest banks in the world, they're scrambling to fill in the ranks. And before I left Canada as a Canadian citizen, I did leave. I did work in the banks for many years, and I worked with a lot of old people, and they're due to retire. So they need people to fill those jobs. So I'd say That's why we do, if we do send a lot of people to study for business, degrees or financial degrees or diplomas, and we do send a lot of South Africans for computer programming. Computer programming is a big degree we send people towards, and that's what the country wants. Last question.
So I think you kind of answered this question as well now. But which is better to apply for? Is it better to apply for an IT program or continue to masters? This gentleman has already got his honours degree in finance.
Just repeat that question again.
Which is better to apply for, an IT program?
I believe the person who asked the question already has their undergraduate. I'm an immigration expert, okay? My job is to make people Canadian citizens, okay? So the obvious answer is to pursue your master's because you will get more points and you may be eligible for a provincial program, okay, which will lead to PR faster for you. However, the altruistic answer is study what you want, study what you're passionate about, because it will more than likely lead to the job you want and will actually lead to happiness. So that's the real answer. That's the truthful answer. And yeah, it may lead into a better job for you because those IT jobs are really in demand. But if it's PR citizen as soon as possible, then absolutely do the master's. With that being said, a master's is very prestigious. It will set you apart in the Canadian market, in any market. But really the truthful answer is you have to pursue a vocational endeavor that you're passionate about and makes you happy. And maybe it takes a couple of extra years to get the PR in terms of get the points, but you will get there. Okay. I think we have to cut it off now. We've run into overtime here. Again, if you have any questions or you'd like to pursue your studies, please email us at info@Beaver Immigration. Just put study in Canada in the subject line and let us know that you participated in the live webinar, and one of our caseworkers will reach out to you. Thank you so much.